Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So some people call me a single mother with a bunch of bear children. I think that is me. So today I am so excited to share some of the stories that led me to this journey. I'm still continuing it. Kind of share some insight that I have learned so many things from kids. If you love kids, I hope you guys like kids too. Some people don't, but I really like kids, so we'll pretend. Today, empathy will feel our shoes in the kids area today. But before I start, so I'm holding two bears because both are Jerry's actually. This Jerry is very giggly, so we're gonna just put him here for a little bit. Okay, so this is Jerry the bear. Jerry he's a comforting companion for all kids to be healthy and well. So kids can kind of use this portal, scan on different body parts to see what's going on in his belly. You can brush Jerry's disgusting teeth, clean out his earwax, maybe give him some foods. But before we get to this, we started with this bear, which is right over here. Before we help all kids to be healthy and well, we actually started with a very narrow focus in type 1 diabetes. And we made this bear to help kids like that. So basically how this Jerry works is Jerry actually has type 1 diabetes, so kids can relate because he's a friend just like them. And they can kind of cope through the process and early diagnosis and really make diabetes not a scary thing to learn. So to take care of Jerry, you simply squeeze his finger. Jerry feels awesome because his blood sugar level is 158. You can give him insulin and feed him different foods. Jerry has like a food cart who loves crackers. So you can just swipe this food across his mouth. Feels a plate, and we're gonna say this is a snack. Jerry has all these different storybooks, so he is training for the Olympics game, and he needs to learn all these different sports like climbing, diving, or more bear-centric sports. He meets friends like Momo the monkey and George the vegetarian shark. But the way we teach yes, the story of George is actually he just wants to get some to see me, but all the little fishes are like scared of George, so they're all running away. So Jerry helps George how to become friends with the little fishes, so he's not the scary shark. But the way we teach about diabetes lesson is that we don't, explicitly say learn diabetes. We actually do things like, in the story from the Momo the monkey, Jerry will, learn how to climb, and Momo will teach things like, climbing is just like rotating your rotation sites. You can't just use only one arm to go up the tree. You have to use all of your body parts. So that's how, the side rotation works. But that's basically how Jerry works. But before we even got to these Jerrys, it took a long journey. We built tons of prototypes, tested with so many kids, but I'm gonna go all the way back to how we started, why we started, and kind of share different insight that led to this two special bears. So the journey starts when I was in 6th grade. That's me. This is a really awkward photo because I didn't know I had this. This is apparently a church. I was so bored out by my sister. And this awkward photo was taken, but this is a really important time for me because that's the year when my dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So in my family, my father and my grandparents, they all have type 2 diabetes. They were diagnosed later in their age, like in their 50s and 40s. Both my grandparents passed away from the complications behind the condition, like heart attack and hypoglycemia shock. My grandfather passed away when I was in 6th grade. To be honest, I had no idea what type 2 diabetes meant. I didn't understand. So even though my grandfather passed away, I didn't understand how serious the content was. until my dad was diagnosed a year after, he was not, obese, but he was more on maybe the higher side of the normal BMI spectrum, and he got diagnosed. And he was living a very pill-dependent life that he called. So he's taking 50 to 20 pills a day. Every meal that he eats, he was always stressed out because his meal became a number map. Like it became a map. Like how many carbs am I eating? Can I eat this? Can I not? I want to eat the delicious donut like over there, but I can't. So it became this guilt and this stressful moment every time he had to eat. One day, my dad decided to, you know what? Apparently, if you exercise and eat healthy, and if I figure out a way to maintain my blood sugar level, I don't need to take pills anymore. So I'm going to exercise. So just, and he just bought a running machine and started walking about 15 to 20 miles a day as a way to not take pills anymore. And, seeing my dad walking every day was eye-opening. It's very inspiring, but, there's a lot of things as a family we have to do to make sure he's not feeling alone. So what we did was, as a family members, we changed our whole diet, started eating like vegetables and peppers and all these things as a snack to make sure that, this whole process was very enjoyable for my dad, and he felt like there was support for him to kind of go through the process. So in 2 months, he lost about 40 pounds, to the point I never seen my dad that skinny, but his blood sugar level was constantly good, always in the 199 all the time. That he found his own confidence that I can do anything. I can take control of my own diabetes, and that story really inspired me to help other people with similar conditions like type 2 diabetes and chronic conditions, because understanding that is really important, and also as a kid to understand what those means and what having that health literacy is really important to help other people with that condition. So when I went to college, I entered this competition. I was part of this group that can use design thinking to solve social impact called Design for America. And the project was, how can you help the lives of people living with diabetes? And I looked into this, I was shocked. Not only 18% of children have a chronic conditions. Every year about 75,000 kids are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Even for adults, more than 50% of adult population have one or more different kinds of chronic conditions. So if you imagine all those kids who are affected by their adults or their loved ones, the need to understand the conditions is huge. But when I looked deep into the problem of what kids are going through, what kids with type 1 diabetes are going through, it was very shocking. So the experience that I got to learn is that kids are diagnosed as young as 18 months old. Their life just changes overnight. And the way they're diagnosed is not even like you're at the home, you kind of slowly understand type 1 diabetes. It's always involved with the ER experience. Kids' blood sugar levels are so low or so high, their face might be turning blue, they might be very lethargic on the couch. Parents are surprised and freaked out, they don't know what to do. They bring the kids to the ER, and that's the moment that they realize the kids have type 1 diabetes. And the stressful moments begins. So for parents, the day after the kids are diagnosed at the ER, they are put into a boot camp, a day or maybe 3 days maximum, to learn everything you need to learn about type 1 diabetes in the hospital, and you're sent to the home and say, look, I think you know everything with type 1 diabetes, now you can go to the home and take care of your own child, which is so difficult to learn in a day or 3 days. So parents feel all this burden that, if my kid is not feeling well, that is my responsibility, that is my fault. But there's always this battle of, it's my fault, I feel guilt, how can I make sure that my kid is feeling good? But for children, they're so young to understand what they're going through. Like every day they check their blood sugar level 8 times a day. They are woken up at night because their parents have to check their blood sugar level to make sure they're feeling good. And it's really difficult for them to find other kids with type 1 diabetes, so they feel alone, they don't know how to share their process, and they don't have the vocabulary to exactly share what diabetes is or even how they feel. So with this insight, I was, there's something needs to be, helped, we need to do to help these kids, and that got really inspired me to kind of start this process. So, as designers and creative people do, even though I have the past experience of my dad having type 2 diabetes, I decided to just pretend that I don't know anything about this context. I'm going to go into the field and really observe what families are going through and really be in their shoes to really see what the process is like. But so, in my Googling for many times, you kind of have this like medical lingo, medical problem that people talk about. But when I went to the homes of how kids are coping, I was actually surprised with what they're going through. So I'm going to ask the audience, how many of you had a plush animal or a teddy bear growing up, the one that you attached? Awesome. My favorite was not a teddy bear, it was like a plush piggy. But, but kind of going along with insight, those teddy bears, researchers call it, is a security object. So what security objects are is that it's a companion or an object that gives you this feeling of safe and comfort. And that's kind of, and some researchers also say that a touch of a teddy bear for a child is as effective as a touch of a human being. It's kind of interesting. But when we went to the homes and and observed all these kids, we saw something really interesting that was around the security object. So all these kids were giving shots to their own teddy bear, drawing a picture of an insulin pump, it's like an insulin gadget that they wear to give insulin, to the fur of the plush animal. And they're just doing all this dramatic play around care to kind of to cope with their emotions, that they wanted a friend that is just like them, and that was their teddy bear. So looking at this, we realized, well, this is how kids cope with their emotions, which is really interesting. And we see this huge gap in type 1 diabetes education that kids need to learn. How can you bring those two together? But also, how can you design it so that we don't lose this existing play that kids already do? So that's how Jared was born, with that insight. And we started with this drawing. This is me before I learned how to really use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. I promise I do a better illustration than this now. And we entered this concept and entered that competition that I mentioned before and won the most creative prize. And the idea was validated, but you kind of have to start prototyping. So in my junior year in college, I started prototyping this, and I was so excited. I didn't know anything about I started mechanical engineering, but in your junior year before that, you don't learn actually how to build things, you just learn theory stuff. So with that limited knowledge that I have, my team and I started to build this prototype. So in 10 weeks, we built our first prototype, and it looked like this. Yes. Looking at this now, I sometimes wonder why I thought this bear was the cutest thing in the world at that moment, because even though this adorable child is holding Jerry really adorably in this manner, this bear had a lot of problems. Not only his eyes are hacked out of a Furby attached to his hair. I didn't know how to sew or stuff a plush animal at the time, so it's a car foam model carved down, stapled with a fur, so this has a very hard body. And his head, being a foam model, it's attached with this 3-inch nail, so if you don't hold his head like this, his head might fall off. But first prototype, every first prototype is for baby, right? So I loved the prototype so much. I was like, oh, I solved type 1 diabetes education problem by making this first prototype, until I realized I was not, by testing this first prototype with a child. So the first child they tested with, his name is Adam. And Adam is a 7-year-old, have had type 1 diabetes for 2 years at that time. And when he heard the idea of Jerry the bear, he was like, oh my gosh, Jerry will be great. And he's been waiting for 2 weeks to see this prototype. So when we went to his home, we actually wanted to do a very clean enter and exit interview. So we covered this bear in a blanket to do like this magician style. And you see Adam and his brother, putting their hands on the glass of the window, so excited. Their eyes are so big, they cannot wait to see Jerry the bear. So we entered his home, and it kind of, this is like us, we're so proud of the prototype, right? So we entered the home, unveiled this teddy bear, and the first thing Adam said was, "That is Jerry." That is nothing what I've imagined before. What is that? And then for a whole hour, he ripped everything to shreds. His blood sugar level is 1 number. I will be dead by then. And just going on and on and on. Just saying why this prototype doesn't work. And to be honest, some people might say, like, you just totally failed because your first prototype didn't work. But to be honest, it didn't fail entirely. Because this prototype, even though it was not a good representation of what we were thinking, it did prove that the concept of Jerry the Bear excites children. This need that kids wanted to have was exciting, so that Adam was waiting 2 weeks very actively to see this bear. So this inspired us to make more and more and more. And that's kind of how led the journey of what we were going through. In the process, there are some times I have to wear a bear suit. The story of this is that this prototype is still a prototype because you can see like the back is still open because this developer didn't work properly. But this is a moment where we were working on our 4th prototype, and it was also the time that I just graduated from college, and I was remote in Providence. This is where I'm based now. And I thought, well, I'm working on a bear, so I kind of want a bear pajama. And my co-founder, Aaron, thought, oh, Hannah, like, that is so stupid. Like, why do you want a bear suit? And that's so expensive. It was like $80 for this bear suit. But I felt like, oh my God, like, I'm not going to wear it. Like, I'll find some useful cases I need to wear this bear suit. I'm just going to get it. And luckily, like 4 days after, we were invited down to do a diabetes walk. And people said, well, just come and walk for 3 miles, and you can do some testing with Jerry the Bear. It was really cold in March in Rhode Island, so I thought, well, I will just wear this bear pajama. It's going to give me some warmth anyway. And I'm pretty sure Aaron was pretty embarrassed by walking next to this a grown-up person. So we walked 3 miles and we started testing, but kind of an interesting has happened. What happened was all the kids came to me, and all the adults went to Aaron, who was not wearing the bear suit. And we thought, well, why is that happening? What I realized is that kids who are young, as 3 to 7, they're really shy around adults. And when you dress up something that is so ridiculous that kids don't think of you as an adult, but see you as a peer, this ridiculous peer that you want to talk to because that person is crazy, that works because kids feel comfortable. So I had an awesome conversation with kids who are introverted and extroverted, just sharing everything they like about Jerry, they don't like about Jerry. And I was able to test with 40 kids in 2 hours, which is amazing. And that process inspired Aaron to also get a bear suit. So since then, the bear suit has become our professional outfit. So we'll go to conferences in bear suits, walking around with Jerry. So people don't know our name specifically, but they know we're the bear people. So that's kind of how the journey went. But in the testing process, so total, we tested about 350 kids and tested with about 29, and made about 29 different iterations of prototypes. And the reason why it took a lot of prototypes is that every iteration, like kids will give us different insights. And some of the things that we have learned was that different methodologies to teach health education or things that is really important for kids to kind of have the long-term engagement. So for example, kids and parents, they have mentioned that every day there's not enough celebration of what they're going through. Keeping up a good blood sugar level is difficult, so the fact that the kids are checking their blood sugar level is something to celebrate than the outcome. So Jerry, in the beginning, it was so much about like, if Jerry's blood sugar level is good job, like the Mario, the ding sound. If it's not, it kind of gave a bad sound. There's a time when Jerry will die if you don't take care of him so well. And that was a bad idea. So we made it playful in a sense that when Jerry's blood sugar was so low, we will play like a Super Mario, like the ending music. So we thought it was playful, but it was way too scary for kids. But all these testing sessions has proved that Jerry needs to focus on celebrating effort, not outcomes. So all the things that we do is, if though Jerry's blood sugar level is low or high, it doesn't matter. Jerry will say how he's feeling, like I feel shaky, I feel sweaty, I feel good, but it's not so much about you did a good job because your blood sugar level is good. So that's like a core of how we celebrate effort. The second part is that storytelling is super important to really engage children. So in the earlier days of the prototype, Jerry was solely focused on care, like just check your blood sugar level, get insulin, and get food. So we made 10 of those prototypes. At that time, we thought our prototype was final. That was the 8th version. And we said, we're going to proof this, it's going to work, and we can go to production. We're so fast and efficient, and that did not happen. Because when we gave these bears out to families for a week, we asked them, here's a journal, here's a camera, here's a bear, play with this, and just we'll come back and pick it up in a week, and we'll just see how you play with this Jerry. And what happened was, half of the group were kids who were newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. They loved Jerry the bear and played with Jerry for 3 hours every single day. That was like 21 hours of play in a week, which is awesome. However, kids who have had type 1 diabetes for maybe like a year or more, they played very actively for the first 2 days, like 2 hours each, and would not play with Jerry at all afterwards. So we thought, well, why is Jerry appealing for this group of kids, but not to kids who are more, like aware of type 1 diabetes than the other group? And kids are saying that, well, I don't know who Jerry is. Like, I don't know what Jerry is like. Is he curious? Is he creative? Is he nice? Is he mean? Like, what is Jerry? And what is Jerry's story that I don't know what he is? Like, he's just a bear. So we thought, well, that is a really interesting part, because we never thought about building a Jerry persona, but that is so important for kids to have the curiosity to learn more about Jerry, and that is how that inspires kids to also learn about their health. Because our approach has been, it's not so much about like saying learn type 1 diabetes. It's more like play with Jerry and you'll naturally learn the health education underneath. So it's kind of like it's hidden, but you're learning as you play more. So that inspired us to create that George the Shark and Mo the Monkey story, and all this Olympics game, because that was engaging for kids, and that kind of gave a different outlet for kids. Like kids who are younger, they will play same stories over and over again. For kids who are younger, older, like 7 or 8, they will kind of go through the whole storybook series and go back to the whole series like that. So it kind of encouraged different play patterns, but they still love Jerry who he is. The kids love that Jerry also makes mistakes. Jerry's not perfect, so there are ways for them to relate to Jerry. In that testing process, something we'll get this letter from kids. This is one of many, which is really awesome. And in the testing session, so this child, her name is Sophia. Sophia doesn't have type 1 diabetes, but her younger sister has type 1 diabetes. In the testing sessions, we realized Jerry is not only for kids who have type 1 diabetes. It also encourages sibling interactions. Siblings can learn different modules. So it kind of, Jerry became this member of a family than just a bear. So when we test with kids, we see them putting a placemat to Jerry in their dinner table and different things like that. So we realized that in the way we build Jerry, in order to keep the core play, which the teddy bear interaction is based out of, having it open-ended free play is really important, because we don't want to prescribe how you play with Jerry. We need to kind of encourage kids to make their own play patterns to really help them figure out their own ways to integrate Jerry's play into their lifestyle, and that's how you kind of bring that health education into their lifestyle to form the good behaviors early on. So this is a photo of all the prototypes we have made from the creepy Jerry. It's a horrible nickname, but I just had to call creepy. That became a nickname, to like the more smaller Jerry. And early days, we didn't make our own plush. We just hacked out of a bear from a thrift store to build a bear workshop and things like that. And as you can tell, the top were all the care-focused bears that I talked about, and the bottom became more the storytelling-based bears over here. So with this process, it took us about 2 years actively to really build out this prototype, and we were able to ship our first production run on Christmas in 2013. And we were able to reach 2% of kids newly diagnosed, and last year we doubled that goal by reaching 4% of kids. And Jerry is also in 25% of all pediatric endocrinologist office rooms in the United States, which is really awesome. Yay! The stories that we received his families are awesome. So, for example, one of my favorite stories actually, this one child, he has type 1 diabetes and autism. And he got Jerry the bear, just cranked through the storybook in a week. And he told his mom, like, Mom, I have a superpower, and that is type 1 diabetes. And that's the best thing ever in the world. And then the parents email us saying, like, so my son just said this. Should I correct him? Should I leave it? So we thought, just leave it. It's so great. But the fact that our education, the play, that really made type 1 diabetes a really fun thing to learn and play that was really inspiring for us. And also, we see some kids will kind of play Jerry more privately. So when the kids come over to their house, they will bring Jerry and do like a tea session and play kitchen. Some kids will bring Jerry to their hospital or their school to kind of talk about type 1 diabetes in the earlier days to create that awareness. So it's really interesting to see how different families use Jerry differently and have different meanings to what Jerry is. And what's really interesting is that these families don't call Jerry as a toy. They say, well, Jerry's kind of weird because he's not a toy, he's not an educational tool, he's kind of like a family member. So like it's kind of, we kind of struggle what to call Jerry too sometimes, but it was interesting to hear from families that they see Jerry more than just a toy, like it is a family member and kind of like their brother and sister, how their kids call, so it's super, super inspiring. But kind of, seeing all these kids playing with Jerry, we realized that even kids with food allergies, they play with their teddy bear to practice their EpiPen shots, and kids play doctors. So we kind of see all these different insights that kids play with this teddy bear, kind of spreading across all children to how that plays so natural for them. And also in building Jerry's curriculum, we talk about social emotional development, nutrition, and exercise. We realize even though there are specific lessons towards type 1 diabetes, it's really important for all kids to learn this kind of concepts. So that's the reason why we made this new Jerry the Bear, with a broader appeal, helping all kids to be healthy, and most importantly, we're able to lower our cost by the third to make it more affordable for parents to purchase this. So we're so excited we're launching a new bear next week, which is super exciting. But we are so excited to kind of continue this journey. And, we have had people asking us about, can you help kids with autism, even elderly, to, use Jerry the Bear to help with their conditions. So we're hoping that, with our continued effort, understanding play and health in the combination can not only help kids, but also all adults and all elderly, all the population in this world to really make health a really playful thing to learn and not to be that scary thing anymore. So thank you so much.
We have like 4 or 5 minutes for Q&A. So if you have questions, raise your hand.
Yes.
Have you ever tried different stories? So like, for example, right now Jerry is a male bear, I guess, and it's like this one type of bear. Have you diversified, or is it even possible, like on the scale that you're going for?
We have, and that was a really important part for us to incorporate in second bear. So in the beginning, we focused on one bear because of cost and testing, and it's the first Jerry the type of diabetes was more of like a proof of concept. The second bear, we have Jerry, we kind of focus on, kind of similar to Arthur and UW. Arthur has a close friends around him. And I think having a community, we realize it's really important. So Jerry has friends like Fiona the Fox, Ricky the Badger. The goal is we are still exploring whether Jerry has all the conditions or other friends also have conditions, probably towards the second part. But the goal is to kind of diversify those characters and talk and kind of make it more gender neutral among the bears. Our goal is the Jerry started out as a male bear. I guess the name Jerry can be women and men, but a girl and boys. But it's more towards the men and boys, I guess. But we're trying to kind of figure out a word, kind of like fee. Fee is like I heard there's combination of he and she. Like should we call them bear instead of he? Like different ways to kind of not address the gender so much to make it more gender neutral. So that's in a story developing perspective you're kind of exploring right now.
Have the kids done anything with the story that's different?
We have not seen so much, but in the new approach, we're hoping to, kids have reviewed our stories before to make sure is this fun, is this not. All the stories that we wrote, we always tested the educators, parents, and kids. The new one, we kind of want to explore kind of writing with the kids and have more voice of their voice into that. So it's still in the early phase, but hoping to kind of expand it more. So yes.
You said with the concept, you're starting to see excitement and people connect with it, but with a physical product, how do you iterate on? Because it's not a quick development cycle like we're used to on the web. So how did you balance just the cost structure on getting new physical?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So building a physical prototype can be very expensive. So that's the reason why we use existing bears and making our own plush to kind of eliminate the cost. So similar to like agile development in web, there's ways to do quick prototyping in the physical prototype. So the approach that we have used so far is, instead of making the whole prototype all the time, we will say this is like a mock bear, and we'll go by parts. Sometimes we'll modify the existing ones instead of making new ones all the time. But it's similar to web. Jerry also has a web component, so we'll start out doing separate. So for example, if we want to test this Jerry simulation, we can just make a simulation and try out different ways to press a button to check Jerry's fingers more on the web and translate that into physical prototyping. But I think depending on which material you use and which process you use, there's ways to eliminate the prototyping cost of physical. So for example, 3D printing might be more expensive than using clay. So in the earlier days, if you don't know the form, just use clay or a soap dish or anything that is more cheap, because to test out whether this concept works or not, and you kind of beautify it along the way. So there are hacks that we use a lot, but we usually try not to use expensive 3D printing or so much stuff so early on, because that when you don't know the form or the concept yet, that can be a very expensive way to prototype in the early days. Yes.
Does Jerry's personality and story develop over time?
Yes. So in the beginning, Jerry he's very confident, and he might think, I know everything about type 1 diabetes, and slowly he makes mistakes. So by working with his friends and kind of learning the type 1 diabetes together, he kind of starts to build his own methodology. So that's important for us because, parents have mentioned that, they want Jerry to be a role model, but Jerry can be that perfect role model. So the approach that we use is Jerry is a wannabe role model. When the child plays with Jerry and work with them, you together become a new role model together. So at that point, we make sure that in the storybook, Jerry makes mistakes. Things like Jerry eats too much food, so his blood sugar level is too high. That's kind of mistakes that he makes. Or he will do downhill skiing and not take snacks, so his blood sugar level is so low that he have to manage those kind of situations. So it's like a combination that we use.
So the storytelling is programmed in, or does the story develop through the case of feeding and
So far there's standard stories, and in order to unlock new stories, you have to do a set of tasks that Jerry prescribes to you. But in the new model that we want to make it more collaborative. So we're kind of moving towards that method. So.
All right, I'm sorry, that's got to be the last one. We're out of time. One more round of applause.